This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, tax, financial, or professional advice. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional, legal, medical, or financial advice. The views expressed on this podcast may not be those of its host or its management. Sensitive subjects that could be disturbing to some viewers and listeners may be discussed in detail. Viewer and listener discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to the All Gave Some podcast, where we'll discuss all things related to military veterans, with an emphasis on mental and physical health, as well as finding and maintaining a pathway to financial stability. Today's episode might be a little tough for some viewers to hear. Today we'll be discussing the topic of veteran suicide. So with that being said, viewer and listener discretion is strongly advised. The first thing I want to talk about is an article from militaryveteranproject.org that states, every day 22 veterans lose their battle to post-traumatic stress on American soil. That is one veteran every 65 minutes. That statistic is one that's been floating around for a long time in veteran circles that we've been hearing. And that is sort of staggering. It's to think about that 22 veterans a day, almost one veteran per hour, loses their battle with post-traumatic stress and succumbs to suicide. I know that just about every veteran that I know that has served post 9/11, 2001, and has fought in either the Afghanistan or Iraq war, just about every single one of them has some form of PTSD. So to me, it's understandable, but the number itself is staggering and it shouldn't be understandable. And so I'm hoping that we can get some awareness and shed some light on the topic. And I have some articles here to pinpoint some of these facts. An article here from the militarytimes.com that says 4 times as many troops and vets have died by suicide as in combat, the study finds. And they're talking about 4 times as many have died due to suicide than combat-related injuries in Afghanistan and Iraq. So again, another staggering statistic when you try to put it in terms of how many people actually lost their lives fighting in those wars versus how many veterans lost their lives due to the stress and depression that they succumbed to after those wars. It's really an amazing statistic. It's kind of hard to fathom. And again, today is going to be a little bit of a different format. We're going to be a little bit shorter here. I'm just going to read some of these articles and talk to you guys about it, try to get some awareness out. And then we'll have some things at the end, some resources that we can give at the end for anybody that's dealing with any type of stress or PTSD or also traumatic brain injury, which is something that a lot of veterans don't realize they even have. And so we're going to get into that as well. But let's see, I have here usnews.com. There's an article that says, failing to tackle veterans' mental health needs could cost lives. A 2021 report by the Cost of War Project at Brown University estimated that more than 30,000 active duty personnel and veterans of the post 9/11 war have died by suicide. That's quadruple the number lost in combat, which is, again, just to reiterate what the last article was saying, is that we have all these studies now because we have this vast amount of time since 2001. You know, we're at 23 years now of the global war on terror, and we have all of these numbers and all this data now that can show us what's going on here. And again, 4 times as many troops dying post 9/11, veterans dying from suicide than died in combat. And I know that I'm sort of repeating myself here with some of these articles, but I kind of just want to get that information out there as best as I can because I think it's extremely important to note. And then we'll get into why here in a little bit. What are the causes of this sort of depression and the long-term effects of dealing with that depression? It's not necessarily something that happens right away when you get back, or when people have gotten out. A lot of these studies are finding that these soldiers are carrying this depression and carrying this weight for many, many years before it gets to be too much for them the weight is too much for them to bear. And so I'm hoping that we can shed a little bit of light on this and maybe recognize some things in ourselves or in our loved ones or friends and family members who we know is dealing with some of these things. So let's see. There's another article here that I found. So it's usnews.com again goes on to say, but even veterans with access to mental health resources can struggle with accepting the help they deserve. Military culture often emphasizes toughness and self-reliance, leaving some veterans concerned about how they may be perceived if they seek care. The Wounded Warrior Project offers post-9/11 veterans free mental health support, but many still turn it down, thinking they may be taking resources from someone in greater need. And I tell you what, the last line of that statement hits home for me because I'm somebody who deals with post-traumatic stress from my time in combat and also traumatic brain injury. And, it took me about 3 or 4 years after being home for me to even realize or recognize or get the advice, take the advice given to me and go and went to get help. So what I'm saying is a lot of veterans feel the same way that I felt, and you might be feeling the same way, or somebody that you just sort of feel like there's people out there who have it worse than you do, or veterans that maybe lost limbs or went through tougher times in their time in service than you did. But I'm here to tell you the same thing that was taught to me, and that is the resources are there for you. The people have fought for your resources. The government has allotted the money there for all of us. And you're not taking anything away from anybody by going and getting the help that you need and the help that you deserve. So please don't hesitate. If you're feeling like you're dealing with this, with any of these topics, if you're dealing with any type of stress, depression, and you haven't gone to the VA and you haven't seen anybody yet, and you haven't talked to them, and you haven't got the help that maybe you need, I'm urging you to go in and be seen, talk to somebody. You never know. You could be dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. You may even be battling with TBI, traumatic brain injury. And that's a serious subject that we're just now learning about, how serious it is and how many people have been harmed and continue to battle with those two subjects. Let's see here. So I'm just going to continue on reading some of these articles so we can try to get a better perspective. There's an article here, usatoday.com, from September 21, 2023. So they've been doing more studies now since the 2020 studies, and this one says here that veterans are passing away due to suicide at a rate of more of 17 per day. And so that's still a staggering number. However, not as staggering as the 22 that we've known about since 9/11. And I think what's happening is we're starting to understand now the effects of not only traumatic brain injury, but also post-traumatic stress disorder. And so the good news is that the numbers are coming down and the awareness is going up. And that's really the main point for me today, and this sort of smaller, shorter episode on this podcast is just to put this information out there. I know it's a little bit of a different format from what we're normally doing, but I just want to get the information out and let you know that things like this podcast, other podcasts, medical studies, people caring, advocate groups talking about this sort of thing is actually starting to help, and we're chipping away at it. And the more we can do, the more veteran lives we can save, and the more healthy our community can be. So let's go on to see. Let's see here. So usatoday.com, this article goes on to say, in 2020, however, there were 6,146 veteran suicides. That averages to nearly 17 vets taking their own lives every day, according to the 2022 report, the Department of Veterans Affairs. In 2020, the suicide rate for veterans was 57% higher than non-veterans, U.S. adults, adjusting for population, age, sex differences, the report said. So again, we're since 9/11, we have the study in 2020. telling us that veterans who fought specifically in the global war on terrorism, that is Afghanistan and Iraq, have a 57% higher rate of suicide than civilian adults in America. And I understand that would make sense to some degree because, the veterans have the struggles of what you go through in combat, and maybe civilians don't. However, that's not to say that the two one is more important than the other, because it's totally not the case. Veterans are also people who live here the same as everybody else and go through the same regular struggles. But I just thought it was important to highlight that there is a 57% higher rate for veterans post 9/11. Now, that's also intriguing to me too, because this is different from other wars previously. And, World War I, World War II, and Vietnam statistics don't have the same staggering high rate of 57%, not even close, for veterans returning from combat and coming home, and then over a sustained period of time, succumbing to their, what we call the silent wounds, which is depression, post-traumatic stress, and traumatic brain injury. So moving on. Again, like I said, we're just trying to get some information out there today. I think that the important thing now, too, is to realize, again, we have the information. The information is, the data is growing every single day. And we're starting to understand more and more the effects of not only post-traumatic stress, but more importantly, traumatic brain injury. And this is something that's caused mainly by head wounds. So we're talking about explosions. We're talking about, being thrown around due to a violent activity, and a lot of that has increased with the advent and the increase in improvised explosive devices, using the enemy and the tactic of what we saw our enemies using in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. And so I have an article here from hsrd.research.va.gov talking about suicide amongst post 9/11 veterans surged from 2006 to 2020, exasperated by traumatic brain injury. So the article goes on to read, in 2020, the suicide rate amongst veterans was 32 per 100,000, a rate of 57% greater than of non-veterans. And suicide was the second leading cause of death for veterans under the age of 45. Veterans who served after 9/11-2001 also have greater suicide rates than the U.S. population, with rates exacerbated by traumatic brain injury. And again, this is the most important part of the study for me, and what I wanted to package together here in this short period of time to talk about the effects of traumatic brain injury. I had known that I had PTSD for some time now, greater than 10 years. But I was recently diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. I had an RPG explode 6 inches from my head outside my Humvee that rocked me, and I passed out. I had shrapnel and the whole 9 yards. I've talked about it before. But I knew that something happened from that, and I thought, okay, the PTSD is what I'm being diagnosed with, and that's the outcome, and that's the end of it. But recently now, they've been able to go back through the VA system and realize that I'm having some other issues, and those issues are attributed specifically to traumatic brain injury. So for me, it's telling, because I've been out of the Army now for 20 years. So understanding that we have a problem, that our veterans are struggling to deal with their mental health, and realizing that what the cause of this may be. That's the most important thing right now. And then we'll see what happens moving forward. We had a guest on, our first guest, Sergeant Kevin Benitez, was on episode 1, and he talked about the effects of traumatic brain injury. One of those things being that the battle that you fight over time, because over time you start to become more irritable. You have memory loss, headaches, loss of sleep. There's a lot of things that happen, and I think that's why we're realizing now that veterans who have been out for a certain period of time are dealing with this stuff over time, and it's weighing on them pretty heavy. So let's go on and see what the research.va.gov article says here. Let's see. Between 2000 and 2020, more than 460,000 service members were diagnosed with TBI. So over the past 20 years, nearly 500,000 service members throughout the time of that, since the global war on terrorism. And again, we can attribute that to the rise in the tactics that we're seeing being used, which is improvised explosive devices and obviously the rocket-propelled grenades. This study examined trends in suicide rates from 2006 to 2020 for veterans with and without TBI compared to the U.S. population. The study cohort consisted of 2.5 million veterans who have served in active duty after 9/11. They were ages 18 or older and received at least 3 years of care in the military health system. Veterans who received VA care were required to have and received at least 2 years of care. Researchers reviewed data from the National Death Index and the CDC with demographic variables including age, biological sex, and race/ethnicity, in addition to the deployment and TBI exposure. So again, that is a lot. That's a huge study, and that's a lot of room and a lot of data to be able to compile that we have now telling us what's going on. That the rate is much higher, 57% higher in veterans since the time that we've been dealing with the type of combat that soldiers are seeing that directly relates to traumatic brain injury. And again, that's IEDs and such. Let's see. In a large cohort of veterans serving after 9/11, suicide rates increased more than tenfold from 2006 to 2020. A significantly greater rate of change than in the U.S. adult population. Veterans with TBI had a suicide rate 56% higher than veterans without traumatic brain injury. So now veterans already are at 57% higher, but now veterans with traumatic brain injury are 56% higher than those veterans. That's kind of a mouthful, and I hope you understand it. And for our viewers that are watching this, I have this up on the screen so you can read it, and I'll have the articles and the links posted as well for anybody who wants to go back and take a peek and read this for themselves. But again, to me, that was extremely telling. And now we can sort of paint this picture and understand that, TBI is a huge deal. And it took me 20 years to even realize that I had traumatic brain injury. I knew something happened to me, and I knew that I had some issues, but I didn't understand exactly what it was based off the science that I wasn't aware of. But these studies now are important, and they're being done on a vast scale. And so I just urge you, if you're a veteran or somebody who is dealing with this, again, with depression or anything, let's get yourself into the VA system, get you checked out. Let's see what's going on. Maybe you were in an IED attack and you never really got checked out for that. Or maybe you did because you have wounds and you're in the VA system for those wounds, but traumatic brain injury isn't one of them. Maybe go back, talk to somebody, see if you can get reevaluated, because these are the type of wounds that we have that nobody can see. And oftentimes they go undiagnosed. So let's see here. Now, here's an article by Army U Press, armyupress.army.mil. And this is a little more recent. This article is dated October 8, 2021, written by First Sergeant Anthony Carroll of the 304th Military Intelligence Battalion, entitled Traumatic Brain Injuries, Invisible Wounds of War. And again, that's what we keep saying, these invisible wounds. And it's taken a long time to try to understand what these wounds, these invisible wounds, are actually doing to us. Let's see here. The article goes on to read, since 2001, between 1.9 and 3 million service members have served in post-9/11 war operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. And over half of them have deployed more than once. Many times that number of Americans have borne the cost of war as spouses, parents, children, and friends cope with their loved ones' absence, mourn their deaths, or greet the changed person who often returns. Wow. Again, here we go with the last line. They greet the changed person who often returns, because, obviously that's, again, if you're dealing with post-traumatic stress, it's almost impossible to come back from these deployments and not have some sort of wounds, and not just deployments. If you joined after these deployments were going on, did your time and got out, you may still have gone through some things in the military that weren't related to combat. And I always want to reiterate that. I mean, obviously, I'm talking a lot now about TBI because of the importance of it and wanting to bring some awareness to it. But, there's also things that happen, injuries that are sustained, both physical and mental, that happen to soldiers, airmen, no matter what branch you're in, that happen in the military that aren't related to combat. And so I don't want anyone to think that this is solely related to combat veterans. And if you're going through stuff that maybe this doesn't apply to you, because it absolutely does. And it never hurts to get help, to be seen, to talk to somebody, get into the VA system and see if maybe there's something going on here too, based off your medical history and your past experience in the military. So let's go on to read this Army.mil article that continues here. It says, the invisible wounds of war, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, traumatic brain injury, are serious issues that have been around as long as warfare. With medical budget cuts looming, there is a healthy fear the needed care and research for these types of injuries will be on the chopping block. This article centers around traumatic brain injury and their increased prevalence throughout the U.S. military, especially due to combat-related injuries and the urgent need for better understanding of them and their long-term compounding effects. And so I think the article obviously speaks for itself. I don't want to beat a dead horse here with this, but there is some interesting correlations, obviously, to what we've been talking about. TBI over an exposed long period of time, and the increase of veteran suicides in that same time period. So it stands to reason that we should probably try to get ourselves checked out. If there's a chance that you have something that you think could be related to this and you've never been checked out for it, please, let's get you in there, get you some help, get some treatment, talk to somebody, because you could be saving your life or the life of someone you know. It's extremely important. Let's go on here. I know I'm kind of just rifling through this today. I just wanted to get this information out. It's a little bit shorter of an episode. I thank you guys for sticking it out, bearing through this with me, getting through the information. So look, again, you can go to va.gov. Simply go to va.gov, and they have all the resources there if you need it. And they make it really simple. If you're going through something, obviously, if you just want to get checked out and see, and you think maybe there's something going on, then yes, contact your local VA office the way that you would. Set up an appointment. You can go to va.gov, sign in, get all signed up, and you can get an appointment right then and there through the website. But if you're having an emergency, you can easily call 988. So 911 is normal emergencies. If you're having a veteran, you want to talk to the Veteran Crisis Line, call 988 and select number 1, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. You can simply just text message them, hey, I need help. Something's going on right now. They'll get right back to you. And you can also call 800-799-4889. That's 800-799-4889. So again, you can call 988, select number 1 when prompted. You can text message, and you can call, or you can set up an appointment if you just want to be checked out because you're not sure if maybe, hey, something happened to me. I think I might have traumatic brain injury. I'm dealing with some issues here. I would urge you all to please look into these resources. If you need help with anything, and you're not sure, but you just want to talk about it, send me a message. I can get you in contact with people that are here willing to help, waiting to help, people that can go through your medical history with you and through your records and pinpoint some of the things that maybe you need to be looking at. They can help you navigate through the VA system, which we all know is a bit of a headache at times. If you just want to talk, if you want to help, you need help, or you want to help somebody else because you have some information that you can shine, a light you can shine on this subject, please send me your information. message me, get at me through whatever platform you're watching or listening to this on. I do want to thank you all for being with us here, for tuning in, checking in, supporting us. If you want to donate, please, there's links that you can donate. We'll get that money into the hands that you want it to go to. It's greatly appreciated. I thank you very much. Again, thank you all for being here, listening to this information. I know it's kind of a lot to chew on, and it kind of rifled through it, but I just wanted to get it out there. It seemed like an important thing to do. Like I said, I am now realizing the total effects of traumatic brain injury and the long-term sustained effects as well. So it's helping for me to understand where I'm at and the help that I actually need personally. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. God bless.